Hello, everyone. Hello, Serge. Nice to meet you again. Guys, he is our FlutterFlow guru and main person from FlutterFlow community, as well as head of dev of Middendorf. Today we are talking about the FlutterFlow, about comparing FlutterFlow with Flutter, about FlutterFlow for enterprises, and Serge will try to show us some examples, he thinks about it, and I think it will be so interesting. So Serge, could you please tell a little bit about your experience, how you become to head of dev, how you become to FlutterFlow and moderator of FlutterFlow community? Very interesting.
Thanks for having me, and hi all. I'll start right at the very last question. So how did I get to be a developer? Actually, that's a story that's not so pleasant in the first place. We're a small company based in Bavaria, Germany, and the Munich area. And we're a creative agency doing all sorts of creative stuff for our clients and some projects for ourselves. And at one point, we had a large project for a customer that was finished, and our developers left us like on a very short note. And the app had to be delivered to the client, and it was a big project. And that's where I actually started looking for tools that matched my skills and mindset in development. And that's how I discovered FlutterFlow. It's like 5 years ago. I was one of the first ones to be around in FlutterFlow, and been with FlutterFlow for like the whole time. And it works really well for me. We will be talking about that probably in the course of our interaction. And I was starting to exchange myself with others in the community forum, and at some point it was a small clique of like a handful of people that were very interactive in the community. And the team approached us, and me, for example, and they said, well, we're trying to build a new community, the one that's active now. Wouldn't you like to be moderating? And I said, sure, why not? And that was where I got into moderating the community. Yeah, that's basically it. So it's just FlutterFlow enthusiasm and consistency. So that's the mixture.
Very nice. I pretty understand you in terms of FlutterFlow enthusiasm. So we're on the same page probably. And how is going in FlutterFlow community right now? Maybe you have some updates, something new in community in terms of the Flutter as well. It's also interesting to know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that everyone who's listening and who's interactive in the community will have noted that, at some point during the end of last year, the community was a bit quieter than usual. Maybe that was because also of developments at FlutterFlow, or pretty certain that was because of development at FlutterFlow. And what I can tell you is that since the team has made the promise and the vision, like the sketching out the vision for 2026, the community has been more active. And it's like at the moment we're all in a state of like waiting for the things to come, right? Also me, maybe I've got some bits more of information than normal community members, but I'm also like super excited and waiting. And I think that's also what the community is in a state of right now. We're anxious to see and excited to see what's going to come in the next month, and what will be 2026 looking like for FlutterFlow.
Very interesting. I saw that you have some, let's say, questions for the community. What's better to improve for the FlutterFlow in the next year? As I understand, you already, the community and FlutterFlow as well, already collect all necessary data and build the plan. And if you could share some ideas, some insights in terms of that, it also, of course, will be very interesting for our audience.
I can try. And actually, I think that with the latest update, you've been seeing some new features that have been added that will be quite impactful, I think. One is, first I'm talking about FlutterFlow product features and updates. And there is also other products that are in the FlutterFlow ecosystem that are have been released very recently. So in FlutterFlow, you've been seeing, for example, in the last or most recent update, you've been seeing something that will change, I think, what people can build visually from the ground up, and that's shaders. So FlutterFlow introduced shaders natively with certain presets, and also the possibility to import all sorts of custom shaders, of course. So that's on the visual side. I think this is something that will change and open up many more cases for apps to build with FlutterFlow that are very dependent on visual effects and stuff that goes on the screen. I can say that for myself, I've been developing some games for some of our customers, and I would have been super happy to have the shaders when I built those games. So that's one of the big things that you can already see in production at the moment. And the other thing is, I think, very impactful for those who are building larger scale apps or more complex projects, and that's app events. It's also been released very recently, and I would recommend checking out the docs, because it's a whole new way of interaction between different parts of your apps that opens up ways of, more sustainably building your apps more complex without relying on, for example, passing parameters between different pages and components, or without having to update states very often. I think app events is one of the things that will absolutely enable many more use cases. Apart from, of course, not forgetting Designer, which has been released. And that's, I think, the perfect answer for all those who are wanting to start into FlutterFlow and say, where should I start? I've got an idea of what I want to build, but it's tedious to make a design system, to design all my buttons, to design all my components. Why can't somebody do that for me? Yeah, like Homer Simpson mode. Why can't somebody else do it? And now there's Designer, which can within seconds generate beautiful and very intricate app mockups and layouts and screens and components for you. And I think that's already a great start into 2026 with FlutterFlow. And I think there's lots more to come.
Yeah, but what you are already showing is more than enough. I think that possibility to build large products for especially the enterprise companies and so on, and be much faster in terms of design. So very nice, very nice. Thank you for sharing such insights. I think that a lot of the people from community are waiting for something new. And the scaling is a very big question in terms of not only FlutterFlow, when we're talking about cross-platform development, when we're talking about Flutter. So of course, we have a lot of requests to build MVPs on FlutterFlow, do it in 3-4 weeks, doing fast, and it's very interesting to know about your thoughts how to scale it when we have this first step and need to scale, need to move to second, third version, be production, be or much users, let's say. So what do you think about FlutterFlow? What challenges do you see there, and maybe you have some advices?
Well, I'd say that with FlutterFlow, and especially the ecosystem that is also integrated into FlutterFlow, I'm thinking of Supabase and on the one side and Firebase on the other side. You've got ecosystems and solutions that are very good at scaling, right? That will leverage most of your scaling needs, for example, on a database side or on a hosting side, like out of the box, right? It's a question of it's not a question of possibility. It's possible to scale, I think, ad infinitum, right? With the products. It is a question, of course, of how you build your data scheme, for example, to be efficient at scaling. And I do think that FlutterFlow does very well in this field with not locking you into certain products, not letting you out, giving you alternatives, and at every point giving you like hookup points where you can say, well, maybe that's too complicated or too expensive or too I don't know, uncertain because I don't want to be locked into one solution. And at every point, basically, FlutterFlow gives you the opportunity to hook in and say, I'll do that on my own. I'll custom code that. I'll have somebody custom code that. Having said that, I think that there are, of course, challenges to scaling if it comes to FlutterFlow. And I think that most of these are pretty much due to the nature of FlutterFlow at the moment, because while there are many large companies and enterprise grade customers who use FlutterFlow, I think, but that's only a perception of mine, that most of the users are still in like smaller development groups, right? Like solos or 2 or 3 person teams. And I think that the product has kind of evolved from there, right? So you still see, like in asset management or something, you will still find some, well, maybe some things that will not scale super well out of the box without adjusting some workflows. If you are used to like big enterprise grade solutions from the very beginning. But actually, I do think that these are, well, I would say things that you can get around, right? You can adapt to them, and you can work with FlutterFlow from an MVP as a solo dev until a very big solution that's production, and even like, you know, like being financial institutions are building their apps around FlutterFlow. So I think that's a good sign that this product does enable scaling real well. And yeah, I would say it's just things that you have to maneuver around a bit, and FlutterFlow is still a bit, from its evolution point, a bit more centered around the smaller teams. That's what I would answer if you were asking me that question.
So very interesting that you mentioned even the enterprise companies, yeah, using the FlutterFlow, splitting their team on the 2-3 people and be able to scale and build production products. So you know that some times ago we have requests from the enterprise client, yes, who is a big security company, one of the biggest, and they told to us, we very want FlutterFlow, we want to use it to move faster. We have application with 150 screens. Please help us to move from Angular to FlutterFlow. So because it's very big pain for us to build new models, to make some minor changes in Angular, let's say. So what could you tell the people who have enterprise products and how they can compare it with FlutterFlow to move current project or build from scratch, let's say? So,
well, of course, it's a hard question, because if you're talking about security, I would say that some solutions that require, for example, a very high grade of security, like cryptographic standards and ensuring end-to-end communication and stuff like that on a secure channels, I think those would be pretty much the only cases, I would say, if money and you know, also of course time is also a factor, if that's not the main restricting factor, maybe in these cases building from scratch would be a good advice. But I do think that these are very, very small edge cases. And for example, if your customer says, well, we want to be a bit more flexible or more agile, right? We don't want to wait for months or for years to make small changes. I think in these cases, it's pretty good to use FlutterFlow. The pain could be in, well, setting things up at the very beginning, you know, like the first 150 pages that you have, you will first have to rebuild them in FlutterFlow. Designer could be a real help with that, because you can also like screenshot your existing screens and tell Designer, I would like to have that built in a FlutterFlow logic. So this would be something that will save you time. And on the other hand, the logic will still have to be rebuilt. And I think what's you know, it's a difficult question, because it depends on the situation that the customer is in. But what I would say is a very good argument for companies to switch to FlutterFlow is that they have an understanding of what their software is doing, right? Because of how FlutterFlow is built, it's much more visual. It can be broken down into like action flows, for example. It can be broken down in screens, and it's so much more understandable for companies to work with their FlutterFlow developers than it was working with their developers, right? Because the translation between what the customer wants and what the FlutterFlow developer can, it's much better interlocking, right? Where in the other case, you've got the company saying like this, and the developer going like, okay, but he will do something completely different, and they won't understand each other, right? And that's, I think, a point. So if you want to start into FlutterFlow because you want to have better understanding of what your software does, and you want to own your code, and you want to be not locked into certain developers, I think it's worth having a very deep look at FlutterFlow.
Very nice. So that means that FlutterFlow is like bridge which can connect people from not IT, let's say, or just founders or idea makers and developers in much closer way, let's say. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, of course. I think that's the what makes FlutterFlow really stand out, that it enables, it empowers, right? People who have not a very profound understanding of software development processes to build things, and even if they're not understanding everything and have their developers, which of course most of the companies would need FlutterFlow developers as they needed developers, but they will have a very much better understanding, and they will have more of a security and a feeling of being in charge and understanding what their software does. I think that's one of the main selling points of FlutterFlow.
Nice, very nice. You know that a lot of the customers which come to us with FlutterFlow requests, they trying to start by their own to build in something on FlutterFlow or with some of the developers, and they have a lot of requests to upgrade the system or build the application from scratch even, or just maintain current one. Can you tell about top mistakes of founders or developers who start with FlutterFlow, and maybe some alternatives, recommendation how to avoid it from scratch, let's say?
Well, I would answer the question from the perspective as a FlutterFlow developer and a community moderator that sees certain things happen like almost all the time. And if I put that on a bit of a more meta level, I would say that having a basic understanding of what software and software development is about is necessary to avoid 90% of the beginner's mistakes. So I know that, especially if you've got no coding background, most founders would want to start right away, and they want to build things, and they want to get like really into it very fast. And they will build things en passant, like on the way. They will add new states, they will add new Firebase tables and stuff like that, or Firestore tables. And I think one of the most important things is to avoid beginners' mistakes is have a rough idea of what you want to do and sketch that out on a piece of paper. I think that paper and pencil are still one of the most important tools of a developer, because it can get quite painful if you have to refactor your app later because you realize that your data scheme, for example, is not fit for scaling, right? It will show you your, let's say you want to rebuild a community app, right? Some sort of social community. It will work great with 10 users, will work good with 100, but it will absolutely break either from a technical point or from a, well, let's say, cost scaling point with like 15,000 users. And I think that would be my answer. Even if you don't have and you don't want to have coding knowledge, do not ignore this and do not despise it, but inform yourself a bit. Talk to somebody who knows a bit more than you about databases, data structures, API calls, authentication systems. Just do a bit of research. You won't have to be an expert, but you will have to, it will be very beneficial to you to have some basic understandings about these principles to avoid the real painful refactoring of whole apps when at a very late point, when your MVP is already running and you want to hand it over to a customer, or you want to sell it, or you want to bring it to production, when you realize, oh my God, at the very beginning, I made this and that decision and it absolutely breaks my scaling process. So that's what I would, like to have everyone consider. You don't need to be a coder, but some basic principles are very important.
Okay, very nice. So, yes, let's say it's like fundament, for the people when they are starting to start from right things. And here, we can even come to point zero when the developer or founder chosen technology. Let's say we have FlutterFlow, we have Flutter, we have native development. Do you have something in mind what they are needing to take into account when they are choosing the technology, when better to choose Flutter, when better to choose FlutterFlow, when better to even choose native development?
I think that the question is a bit tricky because I think it depends very much on the starting situation, right? For me, there is no real alternative between choosing like a low-code visual tool like FlutterFlow or, coding native Swift, for example, because you say my app will only be on the App Store and I'll start coding Swift right away. So that's not a real decision that somebody who really does the app development process will do. If he's deciding between should I hire a FlutterFlow developer or should I hire a Swift developer, then that decision would come into place, right? And then of course the arguments for native platforms would be like they are super efficient on their niche, right? That's the niche decision. But I think that most of the cases you want to use one of the strengths of Flutter and FlutterFlow, which is built on Flutter, is to have cross-platform development and not having to maintain certain code bases split by platforms. Many apps are running as web apps today, for example, right? Many more than that were like 10 or 15 years ago, right? Where the app stores were the place to get your apps. Many apps are running on the web, for example. And I think that's a very, very important thing for your decision. You want to have the opportunity to connect with your users on different platforms because platforms are getting more diverse as we speak. Tablets becoming laptops and laptops becoming tower PCs and Steam Decks becoming smartphones and whatever. So that's, I think, one of the important points I would consider, which is your use case. And then I would say, actually between Flutter and FlutterFlow, there wouldn't be so much of a distinction for me. It would be, again, a question of who are you working with, right? If you're working as a solo dev or a small team that's not specialized in FlutterFlow development, I would go for FlutterFlow because the only problems that a FlutterFlow developer might have with Flutter, with FlutterFlow application is like some sort of modal translations or something, like state translations. I wouldn't take that into account very much. So yeah, I hope that answers your question somehow.
Okay, very nice. I would also like to ask you about the comparing FlutterFlow with the Flutter Plus AI assistants which developers now using, like Codex, GitHub Copilot, AI Cursor. Do you think can we compare such, let's say, ways of development, and ways FlutterFlow better, do you think?
I wouldn't, that's again, but it's maybe a bit of a personal on take. I wouldn't want to compare them too much, because I think that it's like, for me, AI is a tool, right? And it's a new tool, and it does certain things super good, and certain things it's not so good at. But what I do not like about developing solely on an AI basis is that you are handing over too much of your work to the AI, and you get kind of oblivious and disconnected from your own project and from the processes. It builds up a little black box, right? And even if you can go into all the steps of consideration that the AI does, it's building a black box. And I think that's the thing where FlutterFlow it's FlutterFlow's mission, right? Open up the black box and make things understandable. And of course, certain processes should be, and certainly will be, more integrated with what AI can do for us nowadays in FlutterFlow. I think the main product and the main outstanding experience we have with FlutterFlow is that we are in control, that we can look into the black box, and that we can understand and own our own code. And I think for me, I'm very excited to see how FlutterFlow will take on the AI question in this year, but I am absolutely certain that they will find a very good solution for that, because they've been tinkering quite a lot the last months. Yeah.
Thank you, Serge, so much for your insights. It was very helpful. Guys, so from this video, build something on the paper before the start. Choose the right and good developers. Don't think about black box, and start from FlutterFlow even for enterprise projects. So again, thank you so much. Guys, subscribe, like this video, and I hope more research will be soon.
Thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.